"Get that cleaner out of my anniversary hall," acting CEO Grant Holloway said through the open radio channel, pointing toward the service door. Daniel Reed looked at Evelyn's trembling knees, then pulled a gold banquet chair from the VIP table and turned it toward her. "Ma'am, please sit." Lily touched her father's sleeve. "Dad, she looks like she might fall." As Evelyn lowered herself, a worn brass badge marked 002 spun across the marble, and Grant ordered the band to play louder. 3 hours earlier, the same ballroom had smelled of lemon polish, warm electrical wiring, and lilies arranged in glass towers beneath the 30-year North Star anniversary banner. Daniel moved through the preparation crews in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled neatly below his elbows, a charcoal event vest buttoned across his chest, and a radio clipped beside the brass key ring at his waist. He checked cables, counted place settings, and quietly corrected the small failures that powerful guests were never supposed to notice. One spotlight hummed half a note lower than the others. A loading door failed to latch. Someone had placed the emergency aisle sign behind a floral wall. Daniel fixed each problem without announcing that he had found it. Near the stage, 10-year-old Lily sat with her backpack beneath her chair, coloring the North Star Starburst logo on the back of an old event schedule. School had closed early for teacher conferences, and Daniel had received permission to keep her beside the technical booth until his shift ended. She knew the rules. Stay near the stage, never touch the equipment, and tell him if she needed anything. "You forgot dinner," she said when he passed. Daniel touched the red thread bracelet she had tied around his wrist that morning. "I remembered yours. That isn't the same. It is tonight." She frowned with the solemn disappointment only a child could make feel like a verdict, then returned to her drawing. Across the ballroom, Grant Holloway greeted board members with both hands extended, remembering spouses' names and laughing half a second after everyone else. His suit was black, perfectly fitted, and free of the dust gathering along the service corridor. He thanked the catering team for making the North Star family shine, then told the VIP manager to keep temporary labor away from photographed areas. The words were soft enough to sound reasonable. The effect was not. Daniel first noticed Evelyn beside a service cart near the glass wall. She wore a blue-gray cleaning uniform, worn non-slip shoes, and gloves stretched thin across reddened hands. A white towel hung from one wrist. She moved carefully, pausing each time she bent, as though waiting for pain to loosen its grip before standing again. When Daniel offered to call her supervisor, she shook her head. "I'm finishing what I was assigned." "How long since you sat down?" he asked. Evelyn glanced toward the VIP manager. "Long enough that answering may become a problem." Before Daniel could respond, Grant's voice arrived through every event radio at once. He had entered the ballroom with 2 board members and seen Evelyn near the reserved tables. His smile remained in place, but one finger lifted toward the service entrance. "Remove that cleaner. Now." The room did not stop, but something inside Daniel did. He saw Lily watching. He saw Evelyn tighten her grip on the white towel. Then he pulled out the chair. When the brass badge rolled beneath his shoe, Daniel bent to retrieve it only after Evelyn was steady. The metal was scratched, heavier than it looked, and engraved with a name he had not yet read. Across the room, an elderly board member stared at the number 002 and let his champagne glass slip from his hand. The champagne glass struck the marble and broke with a thin, crystalline snap. For 1 second, the nearest guest stopped speaking. The elderly board member stared at the brass badge in Daniel's hand, his face drained of color, while Grant Holloway lifted 2 fingers toward the bandleader without turning his head. The music swelled immediately, smooth and bright, covering the sound of glass being swept away. "Mr. Reed." Grant's voice remained pleasant. "A word. She needs a minute. Now." Daniel placed the badge carefully in Evelyn's open palm before following him. The metal left a faint brown mark across her reddened glove, and her fingers closed around it with surprising speed. Grant led Daniel into the event control room, a narrow glass enclosure overlooking the ballroom like an aquarium. Blue monitor light washed over stacked schedules, radio chargers, and half-drunk cups of coffee. Through the walls, Daniel could still see Evelyn seated in the gold chair, the white towel folded across her lap, while Lily watched from beside the stage with both hands wrapped around her backpack straps. Grant closed the door softly. You created a scene. I offered her a chair. At a reserved table. The chair was empty. Grant drew a slow breath through his nose, as though Daniel were a complicated scheduling error rather than a person. Outside, servers moved between tables beneath warm chandeliers, their reflections sliding across the glass walls. Inside, the air smelled of printer toner, cold coffee, and the faint citrus sting of floor cleaner clinging to Daniel's cuffs. Grant placed a single sheet of paper on the console between them. This is not about compassion, he said. It is about operational judgment. Daniel looked down. The document carried the North Star anniversary letterhead and a bold heading. Incident Acknowledgement. It stated that a temporary cleaner had entered the VIP area without authorization, refused repeated instructions to leave, and caused a disturbance after Daniel Reed encouraged her behavior. Grant set a black fountain pen beside it. Sign this. Escort her through the service corridor. Apologize to the guests at table 4. We move forward. There were no repeated instructions. Daniel, and she did not enter the area to cause a disturbance. Grant's expression softened into something almost paternal. He leaned one hip against the console and lowered his voice. You are a capable event supervisor. You work hard. You have a daughter waiting 10 yards from this room, and I understand stability matters to you more than it does to some of the people out there. His eyes flicked toward Lily through the glass. Health coverage, rent, school expenses. Those are real things. I am giving you a way to protect them. Daniel's hand rested beside the pen but did not touch it. The red thread bracelet Lily had tied around his wrist showed beneath his rolled cuff, slightly frayed where it had caught on a cable case earlier that evening. Grant noticed it, then looked back at the report. A signature keeps your life stable. Daniel picked up the pen. Then I'll sign what happened, not what you need it to become. He drew one straight line through the paragraph describing Evelyn as disruptive. The nib made a dry, scratching sound across the paper. Beneath it, he wrote slowly. She was exhausted. I offered her a chair. No warning was given. Grant's pleasant expression did not disappear, but it became still. You are refusing a direct instruction. I'm correcting a false statement. You are not in a position to determine what is false. Daniel looked at him then, not angry, not pleading. I was standing there. The silence that followed was short, but heavy enough to change the temperature of the room. Grant pressed the radio clipped inside his jacket. Security to event control. When the security chief entered, Grant asked him to witness Daniel's signature. Daniel turned the page slightly so the man could see both the printed accusation and the handwritten correction. Please note the time, Daniel said. The chief glanced toward Grant before writing 7:36 p.m. beside his initials. Daniel signed beneath his own statement. Beyond the glass, Evelyn had begun to rise from the chair. Her knees shook once, and Lily took half a step toward her before remembering her father's rule to remain beside the stage. Evelyn steadied herself with one hand on the chair back and lifted the towel from her lap. Daniel opened the control room door. You should remain seated, he told her. I've caused enough trouble, Evelyn said. I can leave. You didn't cause this. Grant emerged behind him, his voice gentle enough for the nearby guests to mistake it for concern. No one is blaming you, ma'am. We simply have safety procedures. Our service staff use designated routes, so the event remains comfortable for everyone. Evelyn looked at him. Comfortable for everyone? Grant smiled. As much as possible. Daniel saw the way her thumb moved across the edge of the brass badge. Inside her palm, rubbing dirt from the engraved number without revealing the name above it. She shifted her weight to stand. Daniel placed one hand on the back of the gold chair, keeping it steady. You don't have to disappear to make them comfortable. Grant's jaw tightened so slightly that only someone watching for it would have noticed. The security chief reached for Daniel's access badge. I'll need this until management reviews the incident. Daniel unclipped it without protest. The loss was immediate and physical. The empty space at his vest felt colder than it should have. Grant took the badge and slipped it into his pocket. "You are removed from stage operations for the remainder of the evening. My daughter stays with me." "Of course," Grant said, as though granting a kindness. Evelyn stepped away from the chair and moved toward the service corridor before Daniel could stop her. As she passed the unmarked walnut door once reserved for Northstar's founders, a green light flashed above the handle. The access panel gave a soft, unmistakable chime. Grant turned too quickly. Daniel looked from the door to Evelyn's closed fist, then back to the report still visible through the control room glass, and saw the file creation time printed at the bottom. 5:42 p.m., nearly 2 hours before he had ever pulled out the chair. Daniel read the timestamp again before folding the report shut. 5:42 p.m. The numbers refused to fit the evening he had just lived. He had not pulled the gold chair into the VIP section until nearly 2 hours later, yet someone had already prepared the story that would blame him for it. The fluorescent lights inside the control room buzzed softly overhead, while voices and music drifted through the glass like a celebration taking place somewhere impossibly far away. He slipped the thought into the quiet part of his mind where he stored things that did not yet make sense. There would be time to question the report later. Right now, there was still a woman whose hands were shaking. Daniel stepped into the service corridor after Evelyn. The polished marble gave way to sealed concrete, the warm orchestra fading behind thick fire doors until only the hum of refrigeration units and the squeak of rolling carts remained. The scent changed too. Instead of perfume and fresh flowers, the hallway carried detergent, damp cardboard, coffee that had been sitting too long, and the faint sting of industrial cleaner. Evelyn rested one hand against her service cart. The front wheel refused to roll straight, pulling stubbornly toward the wall every few feet. She tried to hide the struggle by shifting more weight onto her left arm, but Daniel noticed the movement immediately. "May I?" he asked quietly. "You've already done enough." "Not yet." Without waiting for praise or permission from anyone else, he crouched beside the cart. The wheel had collected a tight knot of plastic packing twine wrapped around the axle. It was the sort of problem nobody noticed until every step became harder than the last. Daniel removed the small folding multi-tool from his brass key ring, slid the blade beneath the twisted strands, and patiently worked them free one loop at a time. The plastic snapped with tiny dry clicks. He spun the wheel once. It rolled cleanly now, almost silently. "There," he said. "It shouldn't pull anymore." Evelyn looked at the cart instead of him. "Most people just tell me to push harder." Daniel shrugged. "Sometimes it isn't the person. Sometimes it's the wheel." Lily had wandered only as far as the painted line Daniel always told her never to cross. She held her juice box in both hands, watching carefully. "Dad?" she asked. "Can she have mine?" Daniel smiled without looking up. "Only if you really want her to." Lily nodded and walked over slowly. She held out the unopened apple juice with both hands. "I wasn't thirsty anyway," she said, in the transparent way children sometimes tried to protect another person's pride. Evelyn accepted it with both hands as though it were something much more valuable. "Thank you," she whispered. Lily returned beside her father without another word. She did not ask who Evelyn was. She did not ask why grown-ups were being so strange. She simply leaned against Daniel's shoulder for a second before sitting back on an empty equipment case. Daniel opened the small first aid cabinet mounted beside the hallway sink. He noticed the red irritation spreading across Evelyn's knuckles where the cleaning solution had seeped through worn gloves. He turned on the cold water, dampened a clean paper towel, and handed it to her. "Rinse first," he said. "The chemicals will keep burning if they stay on your skin." Evelyn hesitated before following his advice. The water ran cloudy for a few seconds. She winced only once. Daniel reached into a supply drawer and found a pair of unused cotton glove liners left over from winter maintenance. "These aren't much," he said, "but they'll keep the rubber from rubbing directly against your hands. You'll get in trouble for taking supplies. They're already paid for." She studied him for a long moment before carefully slipping the liners beneath her worn gloves. "Would you still be helping me?" she asked softly. If no one ever knew you did? Daniel rinsed his own hands beneath the faucet before answering. My daughter would know. The hallway fell quiet again. Somewhere beyond the fire doors, applause rose and faded as another guest arrived. Evelyn lowered her eyes. That's a rare answer. Daniel looked toward Lily, now quietly coloring the edge of her event program with a blue pencil she had found in her backpack. Children remember the things we think they don't notice. Evelyn smiled for the first time, though it carried more sadness than happiness. Yes, she said, they do. As Daniel pushed the repaired cart forward to test the wheel, something white slipped from beneath a folded stack of cleaning cloths. He bent to pick it up. It was an old towel, thicker than the disposable cloths issued to the current cleaning crews. Embroidered into one corner was the original North Star logo, a hand-stitched starburst surrounded by a circular border. The thread had faded with age, but the craftsmanship was unmistakable. Daniel had seen the redesigned company logo on banners all evening. This one was different, older, more personal. He brushed a bit of dust from the embroidery with his thumb before handing it back. You almost dropped this. Evelyn accepted it carefully, smoothing the corner with her fingertips as though touching something fragile. Thank you. It's older than the company branding upstairs. She looked at the towel for another heartbeat before folding it with practiced precision. Some things are worth keeping long after people stop displaying them. Daniel nodded, not pressing further. He had learned long ago that silence often invited truth better than curiosity did. Just then, Grant's voice crackled through a nearby wall-mounted radio. Calm, polished, measured. Please remember, he said to supervisors, all staff break records should be verified before tomorrow morning's internal review. We want clean documentation. The message ended with a soft click. Daniel glanced automatically toward the laminated break schedule hanging beside the supply cabinet. Every employee had signed out for exactly the same 30-minute break. Every signature leaned at nearly the same angle. Evelyn's line claimed she had taken her break at 6 o'clock. Daniel looked at her tired hands, then remembered seeing her polishing the ballroom floor well after 6. He said nothing. He simply looked back at the nearly identical signatures one more time, and for the first time that evening, the repaired wheel beneath Evelyn's cart seemed less important than the paper hanging quietly on the wall beside it. Daniel stood beneath the laminated break schedule while the repaired cart rested quietly beside him. The wheel now rolled straight, but the signatures on the page did not. Each name ended with the same upward hook. Each capital letter leaned at the same narrow angle. Even the pressure marks beneath the paper looked uniform, as if one hand had moved down the list without lifting for long. Grant's radio message still seemed to hang in the fluorescent air. Clean documentation. What are you looking at? Evelyn asked. Daniel did not touch the sheet. Your break time. I didn't take one. It says you did. The hallway ventilation hummed above them. Water continued dripping from the utility sink, one slow drop at a time, while the ballroom music pressed faintly through the fire doors. Daniel leaned closer without removing the schedule from its plastic sleeve. Evelyn's entry read 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. He remembered passing her in the main atrium during that exact window, kneeling beside a trail of spilled champagne with both hands wrapped around a mop handle. Did you sign this? He asked. Evelyn looked at the page, then at him. No. Maybe the supervisor entered it for you. Maybe. Her answer was careful, neither agreement nor accusation. Daniel understood the caution. People who depended on hourly work learned quickly that a truthful sentence could become an expensive one. Before he could ask anything else, the service door opened and the VIP manager stepped into the corridor with Grant behind her. Her name tag read Melissa Crane. She carried a tablet against her chest and wore the fixed, apologetic smile of someone arriving to correct an inconvenience. Grant's expression remained composed. Mr. Reed, you have been removed from event operations. I'm finishing a safety note. Your concern has been documented. Not this one. Melissa glanced at the break sheet. Those records are managed by the contractor. North Star does not alter them. Daniel looked through the plastic sleeve again. Then why did Mr. Holloway just instruct North Star supervisors to verify them before morning? Melissa's smile tightened. Grant stepped closer, positioning himself between Daniel and the schedule without appearing to block it. Because tomorrow's internal review covers every department. Routine preparation is not evidence of misconduct. I didn't say it was. The simplicity of the answer slowed the moment. Grant had responded to an accusation Daniel had not made. Evelyn's eyes lifted slightly. She said nothing, but the hand holding the old white towel stopped moving. Grant softened his tone. Daniel, you are tired. Your daughter has been here for hours. I am trying to prevent a minor misunderstanding from becoming something that follows you. Then let the record stay as it is. Grant glanced toward the schedule. What record? Daniel waited just long enough for the question to become uncomfortable. The one you came down here to protect. Melissa lowered her tablet. Grant gave a small laugh, professionally measured. This is exactly the kind of escalation I was hoping to avoid. He turned to Evelyn. Ms. Evans, your supervisor will review your timesheet tomorrow. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the towel. Daniel noticed the mistake before she corrected it. Mercer, she said. Grant's eyes shifted back to her. Of course, Ms. Mercer. The name changed something in his face, but only for a fraction of a second. It was not recognition exactly. It was calculation. He reached past Daniel, unclipped the schedule from the wall, and handed it to Melissa. Take this upstairs for verification. It's already in a protective sleeve, Daniel said. It can be verified here, and it will be handled through the proper channel. Melissa tucked the sheet behind her tablet. The plastic edge caught the fluorescent light, revealing a faint gray smudge near the bottom where fresh toner had rubbed against the sleeve. Daniel remembered Grant's report in the control room, printed before the incident it described. Clean documentation. Prepared documentation. He looked toward the ceiling camera at the end of the corridor. Its red status light was on, but the lens had been tilted several inches toward the supply closet instead of the breakboard. When was that camera moved? He asked. Melissa followed his gaze. It wasn't. Daniel pointed with two fingers, not touching it. Then it has always been recording the mop handles. Grant looked up too quickly. Maintenance adjusted several angles this afternoon. For the anniversary? For security coverage. Of the supply closet? Another silence settled between them. Lily appeared at the painted safety line near the fire door, still holding her backpack. She did not cross it. Dad, she called softly. That picture was crooked before. Daniel turned. What picture? Lily pointed through the small glass window in the fire door toward the stage. From where she stood, the large black and white founder's photograph was visible beneath the anniversary lighting. The one behind the microphone. The little metal piece under the lady is gone. Grant's head turned toward the ballroom. Melissa looked down at her tablet. Daniel walked back to the threshold with Evelyn beside him, stopping before the line Lily had been told not to cross. The photograph showed two young founders standing beneath the original North Star starburst. The man's brass nameplate remained centered beneath him. Under the woman, there were only two bright screw holes in the dark wood. Lily frowned. It was there when we came in. I thought someone was fixing it. Daniel crouched beside her. You did the right thing telling me. He did not ask her anything more. He rose and studied the frame from across the room. The missing plate could have been removed for polishing. Could have been damaged. Could have meant nothing. Evelyn stood several feet behind him, staring at the empty place beneath the woman's face. Her breathing changed so slightly that no one else seemed to notice. Daniel noticed. Do you know her? He asked. Evelyn did not answer. Grant stepped between them and the doorway. The display was updated for branding consistency. His voice remained smooth. Some legacy elements no longer reflect the company's current direction. Daniel looked at the two clean screw holes, then at the old embroidered towel in Evelyn's hands. What was on the plate? He asked. Grant's gaze moved to the towel before returning to Daniel. An outdated founder designation. Which one? Founder 2. Melissa's eyes lifted. Daniel had never used the word founder. Grant had supplied it himself. A board member passed nearby and paused when he saw Evelyn, though he quickly continued when Grant looked his way. Daniel stepped closer to the frame once the corridor cleared. A folded maintenance slip had been wedged behind the lower edge, its white corner barely visible against the black backing. He eased it free without tearing it. The paper carried a work order number, the date from 3 days earlier, and one instruction typed beneath the North Star header. Remove Founder 002 identification and legacy statement before anniversary event. At the bottom, the authorization line read Executive Office. Daniel looked from the order to the brass badge in Evelyn's closed hand, then to the woman whose name had been physically removed from the wall. The clue was no longer just that the badge existed. Someone had known it, existed, and had made sure the room would not remember who it belonged to. Daniel read the maintenance order twice, then folded it along the existing crease and held it beneath the spill of amber light from the ballroom. Remove Founder 002 identification and legacy statement before anniversary event. The words were plain, almost harmless in their neat black type, but the paper carried the same quiet wrongness as the incident report created before the incident and the break sheet signed by one invisible hand. Behind him, Evelyn stood with the old white towel folded against her chest. Grant Holloway watched from the doorway, his expression composed, as though the missing nameplate were nothing more than a decorating choice. That document belongs to facilities, he said. Then facilities can confirm it, Daniel replied. You are no longer assigned to this area. I'm not taking it anywhere. Grant gave a patient smile. Daniel, this is exactly how misunderstandings grow. A routine branding update becomes a conspiracy because someone is tired and upset. His eyes moved briefly toward Evelyn. Let me handle this privately. Daniel looked at the authorization line again. Executive Office. No individual signature. No work completion initials. Just a clean instruction to remove a woman's name before the room filled with cameras. He placed the order on the narrow service table instead of putting it in his pocket. Then we leave it here, he said, where everyone can see who handles it. Grant's smile thinned. Before he could answer, a sharp voice rose from the coat check alcove across the ballroom. My watch is gone. The band continued playing for another few measures before the complaint cut through the music again. Louder this time. A silver-haired guest in a navy tuxedo stood beside the velvet rope, one hand pressed against his bare wrist. The event photographer lowered her camera. A server stopped halfway through lifting a tray. Melissa hurried toward the man while Grant's attention shifted instantly from the maintenance order to the growing circle of guests. What kind of watch? Melissa asked. The North Star commemorative piece. Number 7. It was in my coat pocket when I arrived. The guest looked toward the service corridor, then toward Evelyn's cart. He did not accuse her directly. He did not need to. The room followed his eyes. Grant stepped forward with practiced concern. We'll resolve this immediately, Mr. Whitmore. He signaled the security chief. For everyone's peace of mind, check the service cart and personal items of anyone who entered the coat area. Evelyn's shoulders tightened. The white towel slipped slightly in her hands, revealing the faded starburst embroidered at one corner. Daniel saw Lily rise from her chair near the stage. She did not move closer. She only watched, her small face suddenly pale. The security chief approached Evelyn with visible reluctance. Ma'am, I need you to place your apron and bag on the table. Grant kept his voice low and reassuring. No one is making an accusation. This is simply procedure. Daniel stepped between the cart and the folding inspection table. Not aggressively, just enough that the chief had to look at him before reaching for Evelyn's things. Then use the procedure, Daniel said. Grant's eyebrows lifted. That is what we are doing. No. You're searching one person in front of the room. She had access. So did coat check staff, gift attendants, security, catering supervisors, and anyone who crossed the alcove during setup. Melissa folded her arms. Daniel, this is not your responsibility. It became my responsibility when you called it procedure. The nearby conversations faded. A chair leg scraped once across the marble, then stopped. The air conditioning became suddenly audible above the strings. Grant lowered his voice further. Do not make this harder for her than it needs to be. Daniel looked at Evelyn, then at the cluster of guests watching from a safe distance. Private room, 2 witnesses, written inventory, same standard for every person with access. Mr. Whitmore frowned. I only want my property returned. And you should get it back, Daniel said. But a search should find the truth, not just the easiest person to search. Evelyn's eyes stayed on him, guarded but steady. Grant exhaled through his nose. Fine. We will review the coat check logs first. And the RFID scans, Daniel said. Melissa looked surprised. The gift bags are tagged, not the coats. The commemorative watches were packed inside numbered gift cases, Daniel said. Operations had to match each case to a table assignment before doors opened. Every case passed the RFID arch near the coat alcove. It was not special knowledge. It was the kind of detail an event operations supervisor remembered because one mislabeled gift could become a board-level problem. Daniel walked to the coat check terminal but stopped short of touching it. Security can pull the scan history. Grant gave a small, dismissive shake of his head. Those logs only confirm movement through the arch. They won't identify who handled the item. They'll tell us whether the watch ever left its assigned case. The security chief glanced at Grant, then entered his credentials. A pale list of numbers appeared on the monitor. Daniel asked for item 7. The chief found it. Case 7 had crossed the RFID arch at 7:18 p.m., moving from the display table into the secure gift storage zone. Evelyn had been visible in the main atrium at that time, polishing the marble beneath the anniversary banner. Melissa leaned toward the screen. That could be a duplicate tag. Check the case seal, Daniel said. The chief retrieved the matching gift case from the storage cabinet. Its paper seal was unbroken, but the weight felt wrong. Inside was no watch, only a velvet insert and a handwritten table card marked 12 instead of 7. Daniel looked toward the gift tables. The cases were switched before sealing. A young event assistant near the alcove went still. She was barely older than college age, her hands trembling around a roll of adhesive labels. Grant noticed her at the same moment. Who prepared the cases? He asked. The girl opened her mouth but no sound came. Daniel did not point to her. The scan history will show the route, he said. Pull the hallway camera. The security chief typed another command. A warning box appeared. Footage unavailable due to scheduled maintenance. Grant's answer came too quickly. That camera was supposed to be unavailable tonight. The room stilled. He corrected himself at once. Scheduled to be unavailable. Maintenance was approved. Daniel did not react to the slip. He looked at the black monitor, then at the polished brass frame surrounding it. Reflected in the dark glass was a second security screen mounted high above the lighting control station. The main hallway camera is down, he said. The technical camera isn't. The chief followed his gaze. That camera existed to document equipment movement and stage safety, not guests. Its angle caught only the edge of the coat alcove, distorted through the reflection of the glass control wall. The footage was grainy, but it showed enough. At 7:14 p.m., the young assistant placed a Table 12 label on Case 7. At 7:18, Melissa noticed the mismatch, carried the case into the secured room, and placed the watch separately in the wall safe so it would not be handed to the wrong guest. No one had stolen it. No cleaner had touched it. Melissa's face lost color. I was going to correct the log after the opening remarks. Daniel looked at the assistant. Was she told to switch the labels? The girl nodded once, eyes wet. I mixed up 2 cards. Ms. Crane fixed it. Grant turned toward Melissa. Why wasn't this reported? Daniel answered before she could. Because it was a recoverable event error, not theft. He kept his voice even. Open the safe. The security chief entered the code. The commemorative watch rested inside on a square of black velvet, untouched. Mr. Whitmore let out a breath and reached for it, but Daniel asked the chief to record the recovery first. Then he stepped back, leaving Melissa and the young assistant out of the center of the room. He could have exposed them. He could have used their mistake to humiliate Grant. Instead, he looked at the guests who had watched Evelyn prepare to be searched. "The watch was secured before she entered the area," he said. "Her belongings do not need to be opened." The room did not apologize. Not yet, but the suspicion shifted. A server lowered her eyes. Mr. Whitmore gave Evelyn a stiff, embarrassed nod. Lily slowly sat down again, one hand still curled around her backpack strap. Evelyn studied. Daniel with an expression different from the one she had worn beside the gold chair. Not trust, not fully, but attention. "Daniel Reed," she said quietly. "Is that right?" He nodded. The security chief copied the technical footage to an evidence drive and wrote a checksum on a paper log. Grant stepped beside him. "We don't need to preserve routine footage after the item has been recovered." The chief kept writing. "It documents the resolution." Grant's gaze hardened for half a second before the professional mask returned. "Of course. Follow procedure." Daniel looked back at the dark hallway monitor. The camera outage had not hidden a theft. It had almost created one. And when the chief opened the maintenance record, the order to disable that camera came from the executive office account at 6:51 p.m., while Grant Holloway was standing on stage in front of 300 witnesses. The security chief turned the maintenance log toward Daniel, and the timestamp sat between them like a lit match. 6:51 p.m. The order to disable the hallway camera had come from the executive office account while Grant Holloway was delivering his anniversary speech beneath 300 pairs of eyes. "Someone used his credentials," Melissa said. "Or someone scheduled the command earlier," Grant replied. "Either explanation is routine." Daniel looked at the account history rather than at Grant. "Then the system should show which device sent it." The security office was small, windowless, and colder than the ballroom. Blue light from 6 monitors flattened every face. A printer clicked through a stack of incident forms, and the ventilation fan rattled each time the compressor engaged. Evelyn stood near the door with the old embroidered towel folded over one arm, while Lily sat in a chair outside the glass partition, close enough for Daniel to see her but far enough from the conversation to remain safe. Grant placed both palms on the desk. "This event is already behind schedule. The missing watch has been recovered. We will review account access tomorrow." The camera outage almost turned an event error into an accusation of theft, Daniel said. "That is not routine. Be careful with your language." "I am." The security chief entered a deeper audit screen. The record showed the command had not been scheduled. It had been entered from a desktop assigned to the executive office support suite at 6:49 p.m., then activated 2 minutes later. The same device had accessed the contractor brake system at 6:23 and the internal maintenance portal at 5:38. Daniel felt the pieces shift, not into certainty but into pattern. "Open the 5:38 entry," he said. Grant straightened. "He is suspended from operations. He should not be directing an internal review." "He is not," the chief said quietly. "I am." The screen refreshed. At 5:38, the support suite desktop had opened a work order connected to the founder display. At 5:40, it downloaded the anniversary floor plan. At 5:42, it created the incident report accusing Daniel of encouraging a disruption that had not yet happened. The printer stopped mid-cycle. In the sudden quiet, the hum of the monitors seemed louder than the ballroom orchestra beyond the walls. Evelyn looked at the timestamp, then at Daniel. She did not soften with sympathy. Her attention sharpened with evidence. Grant removed a folded handkerchief from his pocket and touched it once to his temple. "Executive assistants prepare contingency documents. That is neither illegal nor unusual." "A contingency for a cleaner sitting in a chair?" Daniel asked. Grant's hand paused before returning the handkerchief to his pocket. "A contingency for operational insubordination." Before the instruction was given? No one answered. Daniel could have pressed harder. He could have read Grant's silence as permission to accuse him in front of the board. Instead, he turned back to the system. An accusation made too early could be dismissed as anger. A pattern preserved correctly could survive anyone's title. Show the contractor break records, he said. Melissa folded her arms. Those are outside Northstar's direct control. The same device accessed them. The security chief opened the logs. Evelyn's record had been changed at 6:24 p.m. from no break recorded to a 30-minute break beginning at 6. 11 other cleaners had identical changes within 90 seconds. Every entry used the same manager override. Every electronic acknowledgement had been inserted from the executive office support desktop. They did not sign those, Daniel said. Evelyn stepped closer. No, her voice was low but certain. Some of them were told the shift would be shortened if they asked for breaks. Others were told to finish first and sign later. Grant looked at her with controlled impatience. Ms. Mercer, you are temporary contract staff. You may not understand how aggregate time reporting works. Evelyn's eyes remained on the monitor. I understand when one hand signs 12 names. Grant's jaw moved once. This conversation is becoming inappropriate. Daniel noticed a linked invoice number beside the break entries. He asked the chief to open it. The invoice showed charges for paid rest periods, chemical-resistant gloves, cotton liners, protective eyewear, and skin-neutralizing wash stations for the entire cleaning crew. The amounts had been approved and paid. A warehouse receipt tab sat empty. Where are the delivery confirmations? Daniel asked. Melissa leaned closer. There should be attached scans. There were none. The system listed 3 deliveries across 6 months, but the inventory room showed no intake record for any of them. Daniel glanced at Evelyn's reddened hands. The thin gloves she had worn were still folded beside the old towel. The evidence was no longer an abstract accounting problem. It had left marks on human skin. How many people used damaged gloves tonight? He asked. Evelyn's answer came after a pause. Most of us. The security chief searched prior safety complaints. 8 appeared, each closed within 24 hours as unsubstantiated. 4 included photographs of torn gloves. 3 mentioned missed breaks. 1 described a cart ramp with a cracked metal edge that had nearly tipped a loaded bin. Daniel recognized the location before the attached image opened. That was loading bay 3. The chief looked at him. You filed this?
No.
A cleaner reported it anonymously. Daniel remembered the week. The repair request had been denied twice for budget reasons. After the second denial, he had replaced the damaged plate. Himself using spare event flooring and submitted a maintenance note without naming the worker who had warned him. The system showed his note now, buried beneath a later management comment. Unauthorized modification by Event Operations Supervisor Daniel Reed. Potential pattern of resistance to executive standards. Attached to it was a draft termination notice created that afternoon at 4:57 p.m., 45 minutes before the false incident report and nearly 3 hours before Daniel pulled out the chair. The stated reason was repeated interference with presentation standards and vendor operations. Lily shifted behind the glass. Daniel saw her looking at the red thread bracelet on his wrist, not understanding the documents but understanding that the adults had gone quiet. For a moment, he remembered another hallway years earlier, the sterile light of a hospital billing office, and the day he had swallowed a truthful objection because his late wife's treatment depended on keeping the insurance attached to his job. He had told himself silence was protection. He had lived long enough to know that silence could protect fear just as easily. Evelyn noticed his hand close around the edge of the desk. You knew they were preparing to dismiss you? She asked. Not until now. And you still returned the badge. Daniel looked at the brass number 002 resting in her palm. It wasn't mine. You could have used it. I still don't know what it proves. Something passed across Evelyn's face then, not gratitude but decision. She stepped to the oldest access panel in the room, a brass-edged reader disconnected from the newer security network, but still wired to the founder corridor. Grant moved quickly enough to reveal alarm. That device is inactive. Evelyn held the badge near it. A green light came on. The panel emitted a deeper tone than the ordinary door chime, and white letters appeared across its small black screen. Founder override. Evelyn Mercer. No one spoke. The old embroidered towel lay beside the badge on the steel desk. On the monitor above them, the founder photograph from the ballroom archive opened automatically, showing a younger Evelyn beneath the original. North Star starburst. The resemblance was no longer something Lily alone could see. Grant's professional calm cracked at the edges. This access should have been retired. Evelyn turned toward him. You tried. Daniel did not ask whether she could remove Grant, stop the CEO vote, or restore his job. He looked at the evidence logs. Identity is not enough, he said. If we go public now, he'll call this a power struggle. Evelyn studied him. What would you call it? Break records, missing safety equipment, retaliation drafts, camera orders. Those have to stand even if no one knows your name. The room became still again. Evelyn's gaze moved from the repaired cart work order to the draft termination notice. That anonymous ramp report is why I came back, she said. Someone protected the worker's name, repaired the danger, and took the blame when management objected. I wanted to know whether North Star still had anyone who understood what it was built to be. She touched the edge of the old towel. I did not know it was you. Daniel absorbed the words without pride. Do not ask the board to believe you because of me, Evelyn continued. Make them verify every record independently. The security chief began creating read-only copies. He wrote checksums by hand, sealed 2 evidence drives, and called the board's outside counsel from a recorded line. Daniel stopped Melissa from emailing herself the files and instead asked that every copy remain inside the formal chain of custody. Grant moved toward the door. This review is over. The chief remained seated. Not anymore. Grant's phone vibrated. He read the screen, and for the first time that evening his face lost all warmth. The program is changing, he said. My remarks are moving up 20 minutes. Daniel understood at once. Grant intended to reach the stage first, define the story first, and present Daniel as a disgruntled employee before the evidence could be explained. Outside the glass partition, the ballroom lights dimmed for the next speech, and the applause began before anyone in the security office had decided what to do. Then the board counsel's voice came through the speakerphone. Preserve everything. Mr. Holloway has just requested authority to announce an immediate suspension for Daniel Reed and disclose suspected system tampering from the stage. The glass atrium had been reset for celebration, but the room no longer felt festive. Beneath the founder's photograph, the main stage glowed in white and gold, while 300 guests turned toward Grant Holloway at the podium. The orchestra had gone silent. Forks rested against china. The air smelled of lilies, polished marble, and coffee cooling untouched on linen tables. Daniel Reed stood near the rear aisle with Lily beside the security chief. His event badge still missing from his vest and the red thread bracelet visible at his wrist. He did not look like a man arriving to win. He looked like a tired father who had decided that losing quietly would cost other people too much. Grant adjusted the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I regret that an internal personnel matter has interrupted tonight's program. His voice carried the careful sadness of a leader forced to deliver unpleasant news. North Star has identified irregular access to company systems, unauthorized interference with vendor procedures, and conduct that placed our guests and employees at risk. A murmur moved through the atrium. Grant waited for it to settle. Daniel Reed has served this organization in an operational capacity. We appreciate his years of physical work and dedication. But loyalty does not excuse insubordination, and compassion does not permit an employee to ignore security standards. Several guests glanced back at Daniel's rolled sleeves, his worn shoes, and the brass key ring at his waist. Grant had not called him dishonest. He had done something more effective. He had placed Daniel beneath the room's sympathy, where a hardworking man could still be treated as too simple to understand the larger picture. Tonight, Grant continued, Mr. Reed encouraged an unauthorized contract worker to remain in a restricted VIP area. He then challenged documented procedures, accessed confidential records, and attempted to connect unrelated administrative matters into a personal grievance. Melissa Crane stood near the stage stairs, her tablet held against her chest. The young event assistant remained behind her, eyes lowered. Grant looked toward Daniel with measured regret. I asked that this be handled privately. He declined. For a moment, it seemed the room had accepted the shape of the story. A board member shook his head. Someone whispered that Daniel should have followed orders. Mr. Whitmore fastened the recovered watch around his wrist and looked away. Grant placed one hand flat on the podium. For the protection of this company, I am announcing Mr. Reed's immediate suspension pending investigation. Daniel stepped into the center aisle. The movement was small, but every head followed it. Lily reached for his hand before he passed her. He squeezed her fingers once, then released them. Dad, she whispered, your bracelet. The red thread had caught on the edge of his cuff and nearly come loose. Daniel retied it with one hand. I've got it, he said. Then he faced the stage. 3 minutes. Grant's expression remained calm. This is not an open forum. 3 minutes, Daniel repeated. Then preserve the records and let outside counsel decide what they mean. The security chief raised one sealed evidence drive where the board could see it. Copies have already been preserved. That changed the room. Not much, just enough. Grant looked toward the chief, then back to Daniel. Very well. 3 minutes, in the interest of transparency. Daniel did not take the podium. He stood beneath the founder's photograph, close to the gold chair he had pulled out earlier. The chair was still beside table 4, slightly apart from the others, its back reflecting the stage lights. He pointed to it first. Mr. Holloway ordered a tired cleaner removed through an open radio channel. The security chief pressed a key. Grant's recorded voice filled the atrium. Remove that cleaner. Now. Then came Daniel's quieter reply through the same channel. Ma'am, please sit. The guests who had watched the moment now heard what the radios had preserved. Grant lifted a hand. No one disputes the words. The concern was unauthorized access and guest safety. Daniel nodded once. Then the incident report should have been written after the incident. A timestamp appeared on the stage screen. 5:42 p.m. The report language followed beneath it, already describing Evelyn as disruptive and Daniel as encouraging her behavior. The chair incident had occurred nearly 2 hours later. A low ripple moved across the tables. Grant did not turn toward the screen. Contingency reports are prepared in advance during major events. Templates are normal. For a second, the explanation worked. Several executives nodded. A pre-written form could be sloppy, even unfair, without proving a larger plan. Grant's shoulders eased slightly. Daniel looked toward the security chief. Show the handwritten correction. The screen changed. Beneath the printed accusation were Daniel's words. She was exhausted. I offered her a chair. No warning was given. Beside them was the security chief's initials and the time, 7:36 p.m. I did not refuse to sign, Daniel said. I refused to sign what had not happened. The air conditioning clicked on above the atrium, and its low mechanical breath became the loudest sound in the room. Daniel continued without raising his voice. At 6:24, 12 cleaners were given identical break entries from the Executive Office Support Suite. The fake break logs appeared next. Each signature leaned at the same angle. Each break lasted exactly 30 minutes. Evelyn's record claimed she had rested while camera footage showed her working in the atrium. Grant shifted his stance. Contractor timekeeping is not controlled by my office. The override came from your support desktop, a shared administrative station. Then preserve the login records. The chief answered from the aisle. Preserved. Daniel brought up the PPE invoices. Northstar had paid for chemical-resistant gloves, protective eyewear, glove liners, and neutralizing wash. Delivery confirmations were missing. Inventory intake was empty. A photograph of Evelyn's worn gloves appeared beside the invoice totals. Those supplies were billed, Daniel said. Workers did not receive them. Grant's voice hardened by 1 degree. Vendor compliance is under review. That has nothing to do with tonight's personnel action. It has everything to do with why people were afraid to speak. He showed the watch records next. RFID scans proved the commemorative watch had entered secure storage before Evelyn approached the coat area. Technical footage showed Melissa placing it in the wall safe after the labeling error. No saved. No contact by Evelyn. Mr. Whitmore slowly lowered his wrist onto the table. Grant stepped away from the podium. The item was recovered. No formal accusation was made. Daniel looked toward Evelyn's empty place near the service corridor. You ordered her belongings searched in front of the room. As a precaution. Only hers. Melissa's fingers tightened around her tablet. Daniel did not name her mistake or the young assistants. He let the records protect them without turning their fear into entertainment. This is not about revenge, he said. It is about making sure the easiest person to blame is not buried under another clean report. The hallway camera maintenance order appeared. It had been issued from the CO office account. Grant's face remained controlled. That camera had a legitimate maintenance issue. You said it was supposed to be unavailable before anyone checked the record. A faint sound passed through the crowd. Not quite a gasp. More like 300 people breathing in at once. Daniel showed the founder removal order next. Remove founder 002 identification and legacy statement before anniversary event. Executive Office authorization. Above them, the founder's photograph remained incomplete. One brass nameplate beneath the man, 2 bright screw holes beneath the woman. Grant glanced up at the empty space. Historical displays are regularly updated. That decision was approved for branding consistency. Daniel held up the old maintenance slip. Then why remove the legacy statement too? Because it no longer represented current operating language. What did it say? Grant hesitated. Only half a second. Long enough. Before he could answer, the termination draft appeared on the screen, created at 4:57 p.m., hours before Daniel's alleged misconduct. The reason listed repeated interference with vendor operations and executive presentation standards. The room changed. Again, the whispers stopped. Grant's hand left the podium. Drafts are not decisions. No, Daniel said, but patterns are. The front doors of the glass atrium opened. Cold night air moved across the polished floor, lifting the edges of the table linens. Evelyn Mercer entered through the main entrance, not the service corridor. She still wore the blue-gray cleaner's uniform. The old white towel rested over one arm, and the brass badge marked 002 was pinned openly above her heart. An elderly board member stood before anyone else did. Grant stared at her, and the professional warmth finally slipped from his voice. Those signatures were duplicated because the contractors failed to comply with reporting standards. He stopped, realizing what he had admitted. Melissa closed her eyes. Grant turned toward the board, trying to recover. People like her were never meant to represent this company. The sentence landed beneath the founder's photograph and did not move. Evelyn walked forward until she stood beside Daniel and the gold chair. The security chief sealed the original logs. Melissa raised her tablet with trembling hands. I was told to conceal the camera outage and correct the gift record after the gala, she said. I will provide a statement. Grant looked toward the side exit. 2 security officers stepped near it, not to arrest him, but to preserve the room and the evidence. Evelyn did not touch the microphone. She looked at the board lawyer seated at the front table. He opened a leather folder, removed the corporate voting records, and placed the brass founder 002 badge beside them. Then he rose beneath the photograph and said, Before this board hears another word, I have been asked to read into the record the legal identity, authority, and voting rights attached to founder 002. The board lawyer lifted the first page, and the projector cast a single line across the white screen beneath the founder's photograph. Founder 002, Evelyn Mercer. The brass badge lay beside the corporate seal, its scratched surface catching the stage light. The records confirm, he said, that Evelyn Mercer is co-founder of Northstar Integrated Services, chair emerita, and holder of 34% of the company's voting power. No one moved. The words did not explode through the atrium. They settled over it heavy and complete. A phone vibrated against a tablecloth near the back of the room. Ice shifted inside a water glass. Somewhere above the stage, the projector fan turned with a dry mechanical whisper. Grant Holloway remained beside the podium with one hand resting on its polished edge. His fingers had gone pale. "Those records are historical," he said. His voice was lower now, stripped of its practiced warmth. Chair Emerita is not an operational title. The lawyer did not look at him. He turned another page. The shareholder agreement grants Founder 002 continuing inspection rights, emergency access authority, and 34% voting control. Those rights remain active. He placed the Founder 002 badge against a brass reader connected to the stage computer. The screen went black for one breath, then displayed the same words Daniel had seen in the security office. Founder override, Evelyn Mercer. A green light appeared beneath the founder's photograph. The elderly board member who had dropped his champagne glass slowly removed his glasses. "Evelyn," he whispered. She stood in the cleaner's uniform before the room that had tried to send her through a service door. The old embroidered North Star towel remained folded over her arm. Her worn shoes rested on the same marble Grant had ordered her to polish. She did not smile. She did not turn toward the guests who had watched her belongings nearly searched. She looked first at the cleaning crew gathered near the side corridor, then at Daniel beside the gold chair. "My identity is not the evidence," she said. "It only explains why I had the right to ask for it." The board lawyer nodded toward the screen. The security chief advanced the record set in the order it had been preserved. The open radio recording played again. Grant's voice filled the atrium. "Remove that cleaner. Now." Then Daniel's answer, "Ma'am, please sit." On the screen, the image from the technical camera showed Daniel pulling the gold banquet chair away from the VIP table, steadying it with one hand, while Evelyn's knees trembled. The brass badge marked 002 struck the marble beside his shoe. Daniel did not pick it up first. He waited until she was seated. That small delay became the clearest image in the room. He had protected a tired woman before he touched the object that might have benefited him. Evelyn turned toward the audience. "He did not pull out a chair for a founder," she said. "He pulled it out for a tired woman." The gold chair stood beneath the light exactly where the evening had changed. No one whispered now. The linen-covered tables, the suspended glass fixtures, the tall arrangements of white lilies. All of it seemed to hold its breath around that one empty seat. Grant reached for the water beside the podium. The rim tapped against his teeth before he lowered it again. "No one disputes that Mr. Reed intended to help," he said. "But leadership requires more than good intentions. The records being presented are incomplete, and several actions may still constitute unauthorized access." "Daniel did not access the systems," the security chief replied. "I did." He raised the handwritten chain of custody log. "Every file was copied under my credentials, checksummed, sealed, and transmitted to outside counsel through a recorded line. The hallway camera order appeared with its timestamp and originating device. Then the pre-written incident report. Then the identical break entries. Then the missing protective equipment invoices and empty delivery records. The evidence did not arrive as accusation. It arrived as sequence. Each record closed the space around the explanation before it. Grant tried once more. "The executive office support suite is shared." The lawyer placed a new access log on the screen. "The workstation session was authenticated with your security token." A photograph of the token reader followed, along with the system record showing it had remained active throughout the commands. Grant's hand moved toward his inside jacket pocket, then stopped. His security token was still clipped there. An assistant could have used it. "The support suite camera shows no assistant entering during the relevant period," the security chief said. The technical camera captured the glass reflection. "The original footage and checksum are preserved." The video played without sound. In the reflected image, Grant entered the suite before his speech, placed his token on the reader, and left the session open. Minutes later, he returned alone during a pre-recorded anniversary segment, typed at the desktop, and exited through the side passage. The screen clock matched the maintenance order, the break overrides, and the incident report created before Daniel's supposed misconduct. Grant stared at his own reflection on the screen. His mouth opened, but the room had moved beyond language. Melissa Crane stepped forward from the stage stairs and placed her tablet in the lawyer's hands. My written statement confirms that I was instructed to conceal the camera outage and revise the watch log after the event, she said. Her voice shook, but she finished. I complied because I believed refusing would cost me my job. The young event assistant stood behind her, breathing quickly. Daniel shifted half a step so the crowd's attention would not fall entirely on the girl. Even now, he would not make frightened employees pay for the man who had used their fear. The lawyer opened the final file in the evidence set. The maintenance order removing Founder 002 identification and the original legacy statement archived beneath it. Above the stage, the blank space beneath Evelyn's photograph seemed brighter than the rest of the frame. The statement removed from public display, the lawyer said, was approved by both founders at North Stars Incorporation. He read it slowly. No worker should be made invisible so another person can feel important. The last word faded against the glass walls. Outside, traffic moved along the wet street, headlights sliding over the atrium windows. Inside, a server stopped with a coffee pot suspended above a cup. Mr. Whitmore lowered his eyes to the watch on his wrist. The board members who had remained seated began to stand, not in applause, but in recognition of the authority and evidence before them. Evelyn faced the cleaning staff near the service corridor. Open the front doors, she said. Daniel walked across the atrium. He passed the service entrance Grant had pointed toward and reached the main glass doors. The brass key ring at his waist gave a soft chime as he unlocked them. Then he held one door wide while the cleaning crew entered the ballroom through the same entrance as the board, the executives, and the honored guests. Some carried mops. Some still wore thin gloves. None were asked to lower their eyes. Daniel did not return to the center of the stage. He stayed beside the open door, where cold air moved across his face and the red thread bracelet fluttered against his wrist. Lily came to stand safely beside him and slipped her hand into his. She let out a breath she had been holding too long. Grant's pen rolled from the podium and struck the floor. He looked toward the cameras, then toward the side exit, but there was no performance left that could separate him from the records. The board lawyer cleared his throat. Effective immediately, Grant Holloway is suspended from all executive duties, pending an independent investigation. His system privileges are revoked. Outside counsel will preserve the evidence, interview affected employees, and review all related vendor and payroll records. No finding of criminal liability is being announced tonight. Grant closed his eyes once. When he opened them, he looked smaller, not because anyone had insulted him, but because the authority he had used to shape reality no longer obeyed him. Evelyn did not celebrate his fall. Due process matters, she said, even when it protects someone who denied it to others. She instructed the lawyer to suspend all retaliatory personnel actions, restore Daniel's employment status, secure the cleaning contracts, and begin an independent safety audit before the next shift. The room finally released its breath. A few people began to clap uncertainly at first. Daniel looked at the gold chair, then at Evelyn and shook his head once. Not for me, he said. He opened the door wider for the last cleaner entering from the cold. The applause faded into something quieter and more honest. Later, offers would be made. Titles would be discussed. People who had ignored Daniel would speak his name with respect. But as Evelyn watched him choose the doorway over the spotlight, one question remained unanswered. Now that the truth had placed real power within his reach, what would Daniel Reed ask that power to change?